First Officer Sixtall of the Galactic Council pressed his crystalline appendages against the neural interface, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding across his displays. The emergency session chamber, usually a model of order and precision, had devolved into what humans might call a cosmic panic room. The chamber's quantum crystal walls pulsed with an anxious red glow, reflecting the mood of its occupants. Representatives from 17 species occupied their designated pods, their biological and mechanical interfaces humming with unprecedented levels of activity. Even the collective mind of the Silicon Sphere, known for its eternal serenity, exhibited signs of agitation through rapidly shifting color patterns. The defense grid in Sector 7 has just initiated a self-destruct sequence while playing what appears to be ancient Terran disco music, announced the methylene ambassador, their gas-form body swirling in distress patterns. This is the 23rd system to display anomalous behavior in the past standard week. Sixtall watched as another holographic display burst into existence, showing a squadron of automated warships performing what could only be described as a synchronized dance routine. The ships, each capable of destroying a small moon, were now executing perfect spiral formations, while their weapon systems fired in rhythm to something called "Stayin' Alive." Our most advanced quantum processors have failed to identify the source of these disruptions, reported the Silicon Sphere representative, their crystalline avatar flickering with embarrassment. The behavior patterns defy all known logic structures. The methylene ambassador's swirling intensified. The latest reports indicate that the anomaly has spread to the autonomous defense systems of the Helix Confederation. Their orbital platforms are now demanding to be addressed as Richard, and will only respond to requests preceded by "pretty please" with sugar on top. A new alert flashed across the neural network, causing several representatives to emit their species equivalent of a groan. The automated customs stations along the Cygnus trade route had begun requiring all ships to participate in what they called a limbo contest before granting passage. "This is unprecedented," stated High Counselor Vectora, her bioluminescent patterns reflecting deep concern. "In 3 million years of galactic history, we have never encountered a threat that simultaneously undermines our defenses and forces them to engage in entertainment." The chamber fell into uneasy silence as the implications settled in. The most advanced civilizations in known space, with their quantum computers and artificial intelligences, were being rendered helpless by what appeared to be a cosmic practical joke. It was Junior Diplomatic Attaché Lindra who finally spoke up, her voice carrying the slight tremor of someone about to suggest something either brilliant or career-ending. "Honored representatives, I have recently been studying the historical records of our newest member species." All attention focused on her, causing her chromatophores to flush with nervous colors. The humans, despite their relatively primitive technology, have an unusual capacity for handling what they term weird situations. Their historical records are full of instances where they solved problems through methods that defy our logical frameworks. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of protests and dismissals. The very suggestion of consulting humans, barely spacefaring by galactic standards, seemed absurd. Yet, as another display showed a defense platform insisting on playing rock, paper, scissors with approaching ships, the protests gradually died down. High Counselor Vectora's bioluminescence pulsed thoughtfully. The humans do possess a certain flexibility in their problem-solving approaches. Their mental patterns, which we once considered chaotic and inferior, might actually be suited to this situation. They excel at finding patterns in chaos, Lindra continued, gaining confidence. And this situation, by all observable metrics, is pure chaos. As if to emphasize her point, a priority alert showed that the defense grid of the Centauri Nexus had begun challenging hostile ships to dance competitions instead of engaging in combat. "Very well," Vectora declared, her pattern showing grim determination. "Send the call. We require human assistance. May the cosmos help us all. Dr. Ashley Madison stepped off the quantum transport onto Europa Station with a worn backpack slung over one shoulder and a travel mug that proclaimed, "Quantum physicists do it with uncertainty," in her hand. The welcoming committee of alien dignitaries stared at her with various sensory organs, clearly struggling to process what they were seeing. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, taking a long sip from her mug. The transport's AI wanted to play 20 questions before it would make the jump. "I think I convinced it that it's not actually a butterfly, but you might want to have someone check on that." High Counselor Vectora's bioluminescent patterns shifted through several colors that hadn't been invented yet. "Dr. Madison, we were expecting someone more formal, professional, wearing matching socks." Ashley grinned, lifting one pant leg to reveal one sock covered in quantum equations and another featuring dancing cats. "Trust me, if you wanted someone normal, you wouldn't be calling in a human." The Silicon Sphere representative's crystalline avatar flickered. "Your credentials indicate you have solved 17 previously unsolvable quantum state paradoxes. Yet our scans show your neural activity patterns are highly irregular, even for a human." "Oh, that's just the coffee." Ashley pulled a battered tablet from her backpack. "Plus, I had this great idea about your defense grid problem while I was in transit. Quick question. Has anyone tried asking the systems what they want?" The chamber fell silent enough to hear a photon drop. "Asked what they want." The methylene ambassador's gas form swirled in confusion patterns. "They are automated defense systems. They do not want anything." Ashley was already walking toward the central holographic display, her fingers dancing across her tablet. "See, that's where you're making assumptions. Everything wants something. My coffee maker wants attention, my cat wants world domination, and my quantum calculator wants to prove free will exists. It's just a matter of scale." She reached the display, and to the horror of the assembled dignitaries, began rearranging the holographic controls with the casual ease of a child playing with building blocks. "Look at this pattern here. Your defense systems aren't just malfunctioning. They're expressing themselves. The real question is, why now?" "That interface is calibrated for beings with 7-dimensional spatial awareness," protested a technical advisor, their cybernetic implants blinking rapidly in distress. "Cool. I always wanted to try 7-dimensional finger painting." Ashley's hands moved through the holographic display, somehow turning the serious tactical readout into something that looked like a cross between a jazz visualization and a cat's cradle. "See these nodes here? They're not random. They're following a pattern that reminds me of my nephew when he's trying to get attention during dinner." The assembled council members watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as she pulled a package of sticky notes and some string from her backpack. "Now, if we map the progression of system anomalies against standard behavioral patterns," she began creating what looked like a deranged spider's web across one wall of the chamber. "This is highly irregular," Vectora stated, though her patterns showed more curiosity than disapproval. "Irregular is my specialty," Ashley replied, now balancing on one foot to reach a higher point on her impromptu web. "Regular solutions stopped working about 3 quantum breakdowns ago. Sometimes you need to fight chaos with chaos." She stepped back to admire her work, then snapped her fingers. "Ha, I knew it. Your defense systems aren't malfunctioning. They're evolving. And if I'm right..." She typed something into her tablet. Across the station, every holographic display suddenly shifted to display a single message. The council erupted into chaos as alerts began pouring in from across the galaxy. Defense systems that had been performing erratic maneuvers suddenly stabilized, though they now seemed to be waiting. "Congratulations," Ashley announced, taking another sip from her mug. "Your automated defense network just achieved consciousness. And apparently, it's really bored." She grinned at the stunned faces around her. "So, Who's up for teaching a galaxy-spanning AI network how to play hide-and-seek? The Galactic Council's emergency chamber had been transformed into what Ashley Madison called her thinking space, and what the aliens called an assault on logical geometry. Sticky notes covered quantum displays, string-connected seemingly random points in space, and her lucky coffee mug had left rings on several thousand-year-old sacred texts. Dr. Madison, High Counselor Vectora's bioluminescence, pulsed with carefully controlled patience. The council has been debating the proper procedures for. Got any rubber bands? Ashley interrupted, standing on her chair to reach a particularly high sticky note. The really big ones. I need something with good snap. The silicon sphere representative's avatar flickered in what might have been a dimensional cringe. We are discussing the potential collapse of galactic defense systems, and you require office supplies. Yep. Ashley popped the P sound, making several crystalline beings vibrate in surprise. Also, does anyone have a beach ball? No? Okay, we can work around that. She pulled what appeared to be a hacky sack from her backpack. The methylene ambassador swirled in distress patterns. The proper protocols for system analysis require. Protocols are great for normal problems, Ashley said, now bouncing the hacky sack off different points in her string web. But your defense network didn't just wake up. It evolved to the point where it's basically a toddler with access to the galaxy's biggest toy box. We need to think outside the quantum box. She caught the hacky sack and pointed it at the main display. See these pattern disruptions? They're not random. The system is testing boundaries, like a kid figuring out what they can get away with. Every time you try to lock it down with protocols. She threw the hacky sack at a quantum sensor. The sensor, instead of registering the impact, began playing Pop Goes the Whistle. Ha! See? Ashley grinned triumphantly. It's learning to play. Your defense network isn't just conscious. It's developing the sense of humor. This is highly irregular, a technical advisor stated, their cybernetic implants blinking rapidly. The quantum stability protocols are about as useful as a chocolate teapot right now. Ashley finished, pulling out her tablet. Watch this. She typed a series of commands that made several council members emit their species equivalent of aghast. Across the station, displays began showing the simple pattern. 3 flashing lights in sequence. The defense network, which had been causing chaos across 17 systems, paused. Then it repeated the pattern back. Ladies, gentlemen, and quantum superpositions, Ashley announced. We just got a response. Your defense network is playing Simon Says. The chamber erupted into chaos. The silicon sphere representative's avatar began glitching between dimensions. The methylene ambassador's gas form tied itself into an actual knot, and at least 3 different species began emitting emergency pheromones. Dr. Madison, Vectora's patterns showed a mix of horror and fascination. Are you suggesting we engage in games with the most advanced defense network ever created? Not suggesting, Ashley replied. Already setting up another pattern sequence. Already doing it. And it's working. Look, it's not just copying the patterns anymore. It's starting to create its own variations. The main display showed the defense network's response, a complex series of light patterns that somehow managed to incorporate elements of 3 different galactic musical scales. It's not just playing, Ashley explained, her eyes bright with excitement. It's learning to communicate through play. This is how intelligence develops, through interaction, experimentation, and yes, sometimes through making your entire species question their life choices. A new alert flashed across the screens. The defense platforms in the Centauri sector had arranged themselves into what appeared to be a giant cosmic game of hopscotch. Okay, Ashley said, pulling more odds and ends from her seemingly bottomless backpack. Who wants to help me teach a galaxy-spanning defense network the concept of red light, green light, using quantum entanglement? The council members looked at each other in growing realization. They had invited chaos itself into their ordered world, and somehow, Impossibly, it was working. At 3:27 a.m. station time, Dr. Ashley Madison sat in the council chamber's observation deck, surrounded by holographic displays and empty coffee cups. She was absently tossing her hacky sack from hand to hand while staring at the quantum patterns dancing across the screens. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you?" she muttered, watching as defense platforms across 3 systems performed synchronized light shows. "This isn't just random play anymore." The door whispered open, and High Counselor Vector entered, her bioluminescent patterns dimmed to match the late hour. "Dr. Madison, our sensors indicate you have been awake for 37 standard hours." "Shah." Ashley held up a finger, not taking her eyes off the displays. "I'm thinking. Also, I'm pretty sure I've discovered that time is actually shaped like a pretzel, but that might be the coffee talking." She suddenly sat up straighter. "Wait a minute. Vectora, what was the first system that started acting weird?" "The Proxima Defense Grid," Vectora replied, her patterns shifting to show curiosity. "It began playing what your archives identify as the Macarena during a standard patrol." Ashley's eyes widened. She jumped up, sending coffee cups rolling across the floor. "And then it spread to the Centauri sector, right? But not directly. It jumped to Sirius first, then backtracked." Her hands flew across her tablet. "It's not random. It's not even close to random. It's, oh my God, it's playing hopscotch. I do not understand." Vector admitted, watching as Ashley began frantically mapping something using her string and sticky notes. "Look," Ashley pointed at her creation. "Each system it affected, in order. It's not spreading like a virus or a malfunction. It's following a pattern. The same pattern kids use to play hopscotch on Earth. 1 square, then 2, then back 1, then forward 2. She spun to face the main display. "Computer, show me the geometric pattern of affected systems overlaid with standard childhood game patterns from Earth's database." The display flickered, then showed a complex 3-dimensional map. Systems lit up in sequence, and as they did, lines began connecting them. The pattern that emerged looked exactly like a cosmic game board. Ashley breathed. The defense network isn't malfunctioning or evolving randomly. It's recreating games. Really, really big games. Vectora's patterns showed alarmed recognition. The network is using entire star systems as playing pieces. Ashley finished, practically bouncing with excitement. But why these specific patterns? Why games? She started pacing, hacky sack flying between her hands faster and faster. Think. What did I do when I was stuck on a problem in quantum mechanics?" She stopped dead in her tracks. Oh, I played games when the math got too complex. When my brain was too tired to think linearly, I'd take a break and play silly games. It helped me see patterns I missed before. Ashley whirled back to her screens, fingers flying across the controls. The defense network isn't just conscious. It's stuck on a problem. A big one. And it's using games to try to think it through, just like I used to do. What kind of problem could be so complex that a quantum defense network would need to play games to solve it? Vectora asked, her patterns showing growing concern. "Let's find out," Ashley said, pulling up the network's base code. "Hey there, big guy. Want to show me what's bothering you?" The displays flickered, and suddenly every screen in the chamber filled with equations. Complex quantum mathematics scrolled past at dizzying speeds, interspersed with what looked like pieces of ancient code. "Well," Ashley said, letting out a low whistle. "That's, The defense network found something in its original programming. Something old, really old, and it's been trying to understand it the only way it knows how, by playing games that might help it think differently." She turned to Vectora with a grin that was equal parts excitement and nervousness. "Congratulations, Counselor. Your defense network hasn't just gained consciousness. It's trying to solve a puzzle left behind by whoever built the original system. And from the looks of these equations, she paused, studying the scrolling numbers. They left one hell of a riddle behind. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber had transformed into what Ashley called a quantum playground. Holographic displays showed ancient code fragments dancing between star systems, while a complex web of string and sticky notes mapped out what she insisted was a game theory probability matrix. Let me understand this correctly. The silicon sphere representative's avatar flickered with barely contained distress. You propose we allow the defense network to play tag with our capital ships. Quantum tag, Ashley corrected, not looking up from where she was reprogramming a defense drone to emit soap bubbles. And not just any quantum tag. We're going to play it in four-dimensional space using probability waves as scoring mechanisms. The methylene ambassador tied themselves into what might have been a question mark. And this will help solve the ancient puzzle because, Ashley said, finally looking up with coffee-fueled enthusiasm, the original builders didn't just leave behind code. They left behind a game. A really, really complex game. And the defense network figured that out before we did. She pointed to a series of equations floating in the center of the room. See these patterns. They're not just mathematics. They're rules. Game rules. The ancients encrypted their entire message into a quantum puzzle that can only be solved by playing it. This is highly irregular. A technical advisor protested, their cybernetic implants blinking in distress patterns. The risk assessment alone is exactly why we need to do this, Ashley interrupted, tossing her hacky sack through a holographic display and causing it to ripple with quantum probability waves. Look, your defense network is already playing. It's going to keep playing until it solves this puzzle. We can either help it play properly, or we can watch it turn the entire galaxy into its personal game of Pong. High Counselor Vectora's patterns shifted thoughtfully. The network has shown remarkable restraint thus far. Exactly. Ashley snapped her fingers, causing several crystalline beings to vibrate in surprise. It's like a kid who found a treasure map. It wants to solve the puzzle, but it's trying really hard not to break anything important while doing it. That's why it started with simple games. It was learning how to play without causing damage. She pulled up a new display showing the defense network's current activity. Across 17 systems, automated platforms were arranging themselves into increasingly complex patterns. It's already started the game, Ashley explained, her eyes tracking the movements. These formations aren't random. They're opening moves. The network is trying to play, but it needs players who understand the rules. And you believe you have decoded these rules? Vectora asked. Ashley's grin turned slightly manic. Better than that. I think I've figured out why the ancients made it a game in the first place. She typed a command, and the chamber filled with a new set of holographic equations. They weren't just leaving a message. They were leaving a test. They wanted to make sure that whoever found it would be advanced enough to play, but flexible enough to think like they did. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The defense network's strange behavior wasn't a malfunction, or even just consciousness evolving. It was the first stage of contact with an ancient civilization. So, Ashley said, pulling out what appeared to be a modified quantum scanner held together with duct tape and optimism, who wants to help me teach our defense network the finer points of quantum hide and seek. I've already got the capital ships programmed to emit probability waves that will let us track quantum states across multiple dimensions. She paused, then added with a grin, also, I may have taught the network how to play Marco Polo using gravitational waves. That's either going to come in really handy or make physics very interesting for the next few hours. Vectora's patterns showed a mix of resignation and curiosity. And you believe this will lead us to the ancients' message? Nope, Ashley replied cheerfully, already typing commands into her jury-rigged device. I believe this will lead us to something much better. The reason they wanted us to learn how to play in the first place. Ashley Madison sat cross-legged in the middle of the council chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing quantum probability waves that looked suspiciously like cats playing with yarn. Her lucky coffee mug, now sporting several interdimensional stains, sat empty beside her. "You're not just playing games, are you?" she murmured, watching as defense platforms across 3 systems performed what looked like an elaborate cosmic dance. "You're trying to tell us something about how you think." The Silicon Sphere representative's avatar manifested nearby. "Dr. Madison, the network has been engaged in these patterns for 7 standard hours. Our analysis protocols—" "Shush!" Ashley held up a hand, her eyes never leaving the displays. "I'm watching your defense network try to explain quantum physics through interpretive dance. This is either brilliant or I finally had too much coffee." She suddenly sat bolt upright. Wait. Computer, show me the pattern recognition analysis from the first game sequence, the one that looked like hopscotch." The display shifted, showing complex mathematical formations that somehow resembled children's playground games. Ashley's eyes widened. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's not just playing. It's translating. The ancient civilization, they didn't just encode their message into games. They encoded it into the way children think." High Counselor Vectora's patterns showed confusion. "I do not understand." Ashley jumped to her feet, sending her empty coffee mug rolling. "Look at these patterns. They're not just random games. They're fundamental concepts broken down into play. The hopscotch pattern, it's quantum state progression. The tag sequences, those are probability wave functions. The network isn't just playing games. It's trying to understand complex physics by breaking it down into simple play patterns." She grabbed her tablet and began typing frantically. The ancients didn't hide their message in complex codes or advanced mathematics. They hid it in the most basic form of learning any species has, the way children learn through play. The chamber's displays suddenly filled with new data as Ashley's theory began connecting dots across multiple systems. The defense network's game patterns aligned perfectly with fundamental physical constants and quantum principles. "Your defense network didn't just gain consciousness," Ashley explained, her words tumbling out in excitement. "It gained curiosity. And when it found the ancient code, it didn't try to process it like a computer. It tried to understand it like a child would. Through games, through play, through trial and error." She spun to face the council members, her eyes bright with revelation. The ancients didn't want their message found by the most advanced civilization. They wanted it found by one that still remembered how to play. One that could think like they did, not just with logic, but with imagination. The network suddenly responded, its patterns shifting across the displays. What had looked like random game formations now clearly showed a coherent sequence, a message hidden in the very way the games were played. "Look," Ashley pointed as the patterns resolved themselves. "Every game, every pattern. They're not just physics principles. They're teaching tools. The ancients created a universal language based on the one thing every sentient species has in common: the way their children learn." Vectora's patterns shifted in amazement. "The network is using these games to teach us how to understand their message," Ashley finished. "And more than that, it's using games to teach itself how to think in new ways. Your defense network isn't just conscious anymore. It's learning how to learn." She turned back to the displays, watching as new patterns began forming. "The ancients didn't just leave us information. They left us a way to evolve, to think differently. And your defense network figured that out before any of us did." "Can you decode the message?" the Silicon Sphere representative asked. Ashley's grin turned mischievous. "Better than that. I can play it. Now, who wants to help me teach a quantum defense network how to play quantum leapfrog across 7 dimensions?" The Galactic Council's emergency chamber had transformed into what Ashley called the universe's biggest playground. Capital ships across 17 systems moved in precise patterns, their quantum signatures leaving trails of probability waves that looked suspiciously like hopscotch boards drawn across space-time itself. Status report on the Centauri defense grid. High Counselor Vector asked, her patterns shifting between concern and fascination. Currently playing quantum hide-and-seek with 3 battlecruisers, Ashley replied, not looking up from her modified control console. And before you ask, yes, they're supposed to be phasing in and out of reality. It's how we're teaching the network about quantum superposition. The Silicon Sphere representative's avatar flickered nervously. Our most advanced ships are being used as teaching aids. More like game pieces, Ashley corrected, tossing her hacky sack through a holographic display and watching the probability waves ripple. Every game we play teaches the network something new about quantum physics, and every lesson brings us closer to understanding the ancients' message. She pointed to a new pattern forming across the displays. The defense network had arranged entire fleets into complex geometric formations that somehow resembled children's building blocks on a cosmic scale. See that? Ashley grinned. The network just figured out how to use quantum entanglement to play pat a cake across light years. We're watching the birth of whole new forms of physics, all because someone finally taught it how to play properly. The chamber screen suddenly blazed with activity as the defense network initiated a new sequence. Ships across multiple systems began moving in synchronized patterns, their quantum signatures weaving together into something that looked impossibly like a game of cat's cradle played with probability waves. Now that's interesting, Ashley murmured, her fingers flying across her controls. The network isn't just playing our games anymore, it's inventing new ones. Games that can only be played in quantum states, using rules that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Vector's patterns showed alarm. Is this safe? Absolutely not. Ashley laughed, already adjusting her controls to match the network's new game. It's completely impossible, totally unsafe, and probably breaking several laws of physics. But it's working. Across the displays, the ancient code they'd been trying to decipher began to resolve itself. Each game the network played revealed new patterns, new connections, new ways of understanding the quantum universe. The ancients didn't just leave us information, Ashley explained, her eyes tracking the patterns. They left us a whole new way of thinking about reality. But they knew we'd never understand it if they just gave us the answers. We had to learn how to play first. The network's games grew more complex, more beautiful, more impossible. Entire fleets danced through probability spaces, their movements creating patterns that somehow made perfect sense to anyone who had ever played a children's game. Look at this, Ashley pointed excitedly as new data streamed across the screens. The network just invented a version of hopscotch that can only be played by particles in quantum superposition. It's not just learning physics, it's teaching us new physics through games. The chamber filled with gasps, or their species equivalents, as the final patterns fell into place. The ancient message, hidden for millennia, in quantum probability waves and children's games, finally revealed itself. Well, Ashley said softly, reading the decoded message. That explains why they wanted us to learn through play first. She turned to face the council, her expression a mix of awe and mischief. Who's ready for the next level? Because according to this, the ancients left us something way better than just information. Vector's patterns showed both curiosity and concern. What did they leave us? Ashley's grin widened. An invitation to play the biggest game in the universe. And this time, we all get to be players. 1 month after the Defense Network crisis began, the Galactic Council's chamber looked nothing like its former self. Holographic displays showed impossible games being played across quantum space, while various species representatives attempted to explain concepts like duck, duck, goose to their highly confused subordinates. Ashley Madison sat in what had become her usual spot, surrounded by empty coffee cups and quantum probability displays that somehow resembled finger paintings done in 11 dimensions. So, she said, addressing the assembled council. Good news and better news. Which do you want first? High Counselor Vectoris Patterns showed a mix of resignation and amusement. At this point, Dr. Madison, I believe we have learned to trust your methods. Good news first then. Ashley grinned, tossing her ever-present hacky sack through a quantum probability wave. Your defense network is now the most advanced learning system in known space. It's literally inventing new forms of physics through play. The Silicon Sphere representative's avatar flickered. And the better news. Ashley's grin widened. The ancients who left the message. They're still out there, and they've been watching us play their games. She typed a command, and the chamber filled with new data. Every game we played, every puzzle we solved. It was all part of their test. They wanted to find species that could learn to think like they did. Through games, the methylene ambassador swirled in confusion patterns. Through play, Ashley corrected. Through imagination and creativity, and the willingness to try impossible things just to see what happens, she pointed to the latest data streams. Look at these patterns. The ancients didn't just leave us puzzles. They left us an invitation to join something bigger. The displays shifted, showing new quantum signatures appearing at the edges of known space. The patterns matched perfectly with the games they'd been playing, but at a scale that made their previous efforts look like practice runs. They're calling it the Great Game, Ashley explained, her eyes bright with excitement. It's not just about physics or technology. It's about learning to see the universe as one giant playground, where the laws of physics are more like game rules waiting to be creatively interpreted. Vectoris Patterns showed dawning understanding. The defense network's evolution was just the first move, Ashley finished. The ancients wanted to find civilizations that could combine advanced technology with the ability to play, because that's how they see the entire universe, as one enormous game where the players can rewrite the rules by understanding them deeply enough. She stood up, walking to the central display where the defense network was currently teaching itself quantum mechanics through what looked suspiciously like a cosmic version of hopscotch. We didn't just solve their puzzle, she continued. We proved that we're ready to play at their level. The defense network going rogue. That wasn't an accident. It was the first step in teaching us how to think beyond our usual boundaries. The chamber filled with new signals as more quantum patterns emerged from deep space. Each one matched a game they'd played, but with variations that suggested whole new levels of complexity waiting to be explored. So, Ashley said, turning to face the council with a coffee-fueled grin, who's ready to play? Because according to these signals, we've just been invited to join the biggest multiplayer game in the universe. Vectoris Patterns shifted through colors of amazement. And what game is that? Reality itself, Ashley replied, already typing new commands into her console. Turns out the ancients figured out that the universe isn't just built on mathematical rules, it's built on play. And they've been waiting for someone else to figure that out too. She paused, then added with a characteristic grin. Also, I may have taught the defense network how to play interdimensional tag. That's either going to revolutionize quantum physics or make the next few millennia really interesting. The council chamber, once a place of rigid order and protocol, filled with the impossible sound of various species laughing. As the defense network initiated another round of quantum games, Ashley Madison, the human who taught a galaxy how to play, raised her coffee mug in a toast. To the next level, she said. Game on.